I know it can get a little uncomfortable for
Yeah,
people.
I'm out of here. I'm not allowed to talk about this. So this is a trap. You tricked me. Great.
Be like, I got you. I got you in the trap. I won. No, I'm kidding.
You win. You win. Yeah, you caught me in your spider web.
Right.
Huh?
Right.
Good reference.
Hi guys, welcome back to Liz Not Lizzy podcast. I am very excited with the guest that I have today, but before I get to that, I wanted to do a quick dragon comment shout out to this person. Thank you so much for your comment, and if you would like to be the next dragon comment shout out for my next episode, just comment down below, nothing inappropriate, for this video. And don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell to all or something like that. I don't know. I'm done talking about my channel. I am super excited to introduce my guest for today, which is Say Goodnight Kevin. I will bury the hatchet and say that I am a Christian, which now I've already regretted saying out loud, but I am a Christian, and I stumbled upon Kevin's channel a few years ago when I was still watching like Christian movies like God's Not Dead and things that you may have heard in the media, whatever. And at first I did not like Kevin's videos. I did not like them, but over time I've come to realize that he is a very intelligent and very persuasive person when it comes to being honest about reviewing those movies. And overall, he's just a very funny guy. So, Kevin, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Saying out loud makes me want to cry.
I can't believe you came out as a Christian right here on the show that I'm on. I'm honored.
I know.
What a big announcement. I mean, it's
God.
just so brave that you would do that. In a country where like 70% of the population claims to be some sort of Christian, that's
I thought it was 100%. I thought.
Well, deep down they are. They all say 2020.
Right.
They all measure time based on when Jesus was born. So,
right.
Come on.
Oh my God.
Well, I don't think you should be ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody minds. Like if somebody's like, oh, I'm not watching your channel because you have this particular belief system, they may not agree.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think I've ever really brought it up before. I guess I hinted at it in my last episode with my friend Hope when we talked about how we met at church, but that's about it. I promise this channel is about
maybe you
whatever,
could have meant like your Satanist church.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh. So I'm really excited. I'll try not to fangirl and freak out over and over about this because I never thought this would happen. But it has. So I'm just going to try to savor this moment.
Making dreams come true on the Liz Not Lizzy podcast.
Be like, this is all I wanted. This is all I needed. I can die happy now.
Well, it was funny. You were like, I didn't like Kevin at first, and it came to realize that he was nice and funny and whatever, all the other compliments. But I think that's like a sliding or a bell curve.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It goes up, but then as you get to know me even more, then you'll realize I'm not any of those things. So it's perfect.
Right. Well, I always love to I realize I'm doing this now, and I'll probably do it with all my guests, but I like to give a little backstory as to why this guest is here and how I know them or don't know them or, whatever. Does anybody care? Probably not.
Today we have a guest. I have no clue who it is.
Right.
But, they're here. Met him in McDonald's, and we'll just see where it goes. That's not a bad idea for a podcast.
I'm planning on having my brother as a guest to talk about video games and stuff because he wants to be a gamer and everything. And I was basically going to be like, well, we came from the same mother and her womb, and that's how we know each other.
We've met since I was 0. pretty close. Same DNA and whatnot.
So I was like, that's how we met. That's how we know. So,
Yeah.
ironically enough, I don't have any Christian stuff to talk about, which is probably new for
Oh,
you. No Christianese stuff, besides maybe a few things. Not really, though. But the first thing that I wanted to talk about today was Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh,
Yes.
love that movie.
I was actually going to do this topic on my own, but as I'm starting to realize, some of these topics are more fun talking to someone else about it. So, what I basically wrote down, it's not a question, it's just a statement, which is Into the Spider-Verse does representation correctly, which
Hmm.
I know can get a little uncomfortable
Yeah,
for people.
I'm out of here. I'm not allowed to talk about this. So this is a trap. You tricked me. Great.
Be like, I got you. I got you in the trap. I won. No, I'm kidding.
You win. You win. Yeah, you caught me in your spider web.
Right.
Huh?
Right.
Good reference. Well, good. You're right. It does seem to, doesn't it?
Yes, I think so. I think as a Black woman, I'll speak for Miles Morales. No, I'm kidding. I'll just
Good.
speak for all the characters, but I think specifically for Miles Morales, I think they do a great job of just him being a kid, an awkward teenage kid who doesn't know where he fits in, private school, public school, all this stuff. Even, you could say his race because I think he's Spanish and Black or whatever. But really, it's just about identity. And I think every single human being can relate to Miles figuring out, who am I? What do I want to do with my life? It really doesn't matter if you're Black or not, And I think that's how
Yeah.
all stories really should kind of be told, unless it's like a historical fiction or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't think it shies away from the cultural aspect of where he lives and the family that he's in and his environment and stuff. I mean, they utilize a lot of the pop culture, Black community music and
Right.
and struggles. So it's not like, oh well, it's not like they wrote the character for just anybody and they happen to
Right.
cast a
Yes.
Black guy to be
Yeah.
in it. Like
Yeah.
it genuinely is a story about a Black kid,
Right.
but it's a story about a human as well,
Right.
a superhuman
Right.
also.
Yes.
but somebody who is dealing with these types of struggles, and we all can relate to having a hero who ends up not being so great. You're
Yes.
going to experience that
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
more you get to know me.
Did you see the
And-
post I put on Instagram? It was the Into the Spider-Verse meme. And it was the scene where Peter Parker's thinking and Miles watches him and then he's thinking. And I said, you were Peter Parker, I'm Miles. What you do, I study to then do. That's pretty much what the joke was. But yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. Well,
I wanted
but also
to-
his uncle.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like he looked up to his uncle.
Yes.
And and that's another thing. Like his uncle turns out to be, spoiler alert, a bad guy.
Right.
And unfortunately, there is a lot of kind of, I joke about this in my reviews, even in Christian movies and stuff. You have the kind of magical Black character,
Right.
where they'll create a character that is, because they're this particular race,
Right.
and they don't want to offend anybody,
Yes.
they won't give them flaws and they won't
Yeah.
make them interesting.
Yes.
And
yes,
I
yes.
think that's great that they have a character who the hero is Black, and then he looks up to his uncle, and his uncle ends up being somebody who he didn't think he was.
Right.
And they're not afraid to actually have real characters in this.
Right.
And so I think that type of confidence kind of contrast with a promotion to a movie that I didn't see. There was the movie Wrinkle in Time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember can't remember which movie I was seeing, but there was this kind of, they have Newbie, or it used to be called, like, at the beginning of a movie when you're waiting for it to start in the theaters,
Right.
they'll have some sort of coming up
Oh,
this
yes,
week.
yes, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. or today we swung through into the Spider-Verse.
Right.
And looked at
Oh
this
my
TV
God.
show that'll be canceled soon.
Right, exactly.
There was one of those for Wrinkle in Time.
Mm,
And I was so put off by it
mm,
because it highlighted it barely highlighted the movie
right,
and just highlighted the fact that the director is a black woman.
right.
And that was
Yes,
like the whole point of it.
right.
And to me, I'm like, the way it was presented, it was like, look how amazing this is.
Right.
That this
We are
black
breaking
woman.
we are breaking history, okay?
Yeah.
This you have to go to this. This is a historical moment. You need to tell your grandchildren about this, okay? This is going to
It
be
was
put in the
like they
history books.
it's like they taught some like this could be misinterpreted, but
Right.
the way it was presented was as if they had taught an animal to do a trick.
Right. Yes. Yes,
Like,
yes.
look, we taught a bear to ride a unicycle. Isn't that interesting?
We allowed a black female director and actress and writer and this to be in Hollywood. Look at us.
Do a thing that men are supposed to do.
Right.
It was like they were trying to show that they weren't like discriminatory.
Right.
And yet by doing that,
They were
that's how it
being-
came across to me. Like,
Yeah.
wow, yeah, I'm not surprised that a human did
Yeah.
a thing that humans do,
Right.
which is like, it's great that anybody can put together and make a movie and that sort of thing, but it's not an added bonus that, hey, can you believe it?
Yeah.
And and it turned out, that kind of capitalizing or exploiting,
Yeah.
that we're not sure that this movie's good, so we're going to use this other thing that might get you in.
Which I heard
And,
it wasn't that great anyway,
That's-
which is
that's what I heard.
unfortunate because I think the premise, if you were to ignore all the racial politics, that the premise itself I think was somewhat interesting. And yeah, representation is good. Like I said, Into the Spider-Verse does it right. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the whole having a black villain. I feel like there should be more black, male, female, whatever villains, not because black people are bad, but because villains come in all shapes and sizes. And personally, when I grew up, even though I love Disney princesses, one of my favorite villains was Maleficent. I thought she was amazing because she was elegant and she was scary and powerful. And I loved that. But you don't exactly see a black female version of Maleficent or whatever because people are too afraid that you'll get the wrong message. But again, in trying to not be racist, you end up being racist and not tackling characters of color as villains or whatever just because you think
or
people
just
will get the wrong
well-rounded
thing.
characters.
Or just well-rounded characters, exactly, yes. And so I agree with that. I also like Gwen, and I like how they also do female characters as a female. If you couldn't tell from the short hair and everything, I know, guys, female. Anyway, so I always make that joke. So I also feel the same way when it comes to Gwen. I think the whole I'm a woman and therefore hear me roar is really not necessary. I always say to my friends, but also just to other writers, just write the world you want. So you want female characters who can kick butt like men, just write them. Don't bring attention to it. The attention is already there because you're showing it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you make a female character who is as amazing as Spider-Man, but then if Gwen started spewing on and on about like misogyny or whatever, and ultra feminism and like extremists, like I'm a woman and like don't touch me, don't whatever, it's not necessary. None of that's really necessary.
Right, like in the Catwoman movie where there were all these like a terrible movie. There was no
and all these cat
had nothing
puns,
to do with,
which was just
yes, lots of cat puns.
Oh
There's
my
several
God.
jabs about like female empowerment and stuff, and it's
Right.
like, well, wouldn't it be better if this female black superhero movie was good? Like, wouldn't that make it better for all of us?
or even if
Not
she was an anti-hero. You know, she was morally gray, which I always saw Catwoman as morally gray anyway. She's not necessarily like Harley Quinn or Poison Ivy, where they're like definitely kind of bad guys. I feel like Catwoman's always been morally gray. Like she's just kind of a survivor. She's just looking out for herself.
Sure.
And here and there, Batman's like, hey, maybe you could care about other people sometime. And she's like, oh, maybe. You know, and then I'll go back to robbing, but
yeah, she just ends up caring about Batman, and nobody else.
Right. So, and yeah, that's another thing. I like the relationship between Miles and Gwen. I know that my brother loves them, and he also loves the show Cloak and Dagger, which is another kind of like interracial couple thing with the black guy and the white girl or whatever. And I'm all for that. My audience knows I'm for interracial all day. So, of course, I'm happy to see Miles and Gwen get along. And I'm happy that it wasn't necessarily a rushed romance. It was a friendship with a possible open door. And I think that's really sweet. But going all the way back, because this is how my brain works, you said something
good, because mine too.
Right. You said something along the lines of how, you know, to an extent, Miles is a subjective story, being a black kid growing up in an urban neighborhood and things like that. His dad's a cop, so on and so forth. And I do think that that is important. I think that there's a line to be road. I don't know. What's English?
Riding.
Thank you. When it comes to having subjective stories and objective messages or themes and things like that, which is basic storytelling 101, is that the premise is specific, but the theme is universal. So basically the plot is specific, the theme's universal. So the plot could be specific, but the theme, basically anybody from any background can mostly relate to. There's always exceptions to the rule, obviously, but that's usually how it works. And I think that is important, because it's important to show different cultures and things like that that people didn't know about but might be open to celebrating or educating or whatever. I don't know. But I'm basically just saying I agree with you, Kevin. That's what I'm saying this whole time.
Perfect.
That's it.
That's why I'm on your show. If you had disagreed in any way, I'd be out of here.
Oh my god!
But you're right. I mean, that's why superhero stories or sci-fi or any of that stuff can be written, and people can watch it and say, "Man, I really related to Star Wars." Well, why did you relate to Star Wars? You've never had a lightsaber or flown a spaceship or whatever.
Right.
You relate because these are human experiences.
Or you're not white. You can't relate to
how could
Luke?
you relate to... But you can, because we're humans, it turns out.
Yes.
And there are those universal human experiences. There's universal principles.
Yeah.
And conundrums that we all face in life that are universal. But then the stories can be specific. Like that's why shows like Cinema Sins, which I don't love, but those shows can like point out, well, these are continuity errors. Well, yeah, it's all magical space monsters, but like. Sure, there's certain, like, you want the world to make sense that you're watching, this adventure. And I think that they do a great job at confidently exploring a real kid's life. It's not, I think that's what throws people off whenever they have a character like Captain Marvel, who is kind of spewing these very pointed feminist statements without just showing you, or without doing it, having I'm gonna show you
I love the snap
that you're,
I love it.
I'm gonna show you that you're bad. And it's off-putting, because there have been so many good, solid, confident female characters. One of my favorite TV shows was Alias back in the day when I was in high school. Alias, I loved that show. There was nothing, like, it wouldn't even cross your mind that they're doing a woman show, because it's just a show. And in fact, Tom Cruise seeing Alias is the reason J.J. Abrams ended up directing Mission Impossible 3 because
Nice.
it's very
Cool.
similar. It's a very
Yes.
similar type.
Right.
He's like, I want this for Mission Impossible 3. And if you watch
Right.
the two, they are similar.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible 3 feels like an Alias episode.
Mm.
But there were certain aspects of
Mhm.
Sydney's character in Alias that
Mhm.
she went through that are more typically something that a woman would do in that situation.
Mhm.
Generally, that you could relate to as
Right.
if you know that you would. It's not weird. You're not
Right.
like, I don't know. It's making sure I'm not offending anyone. No, making sure I'm not being misunderstood because
Right. Yeah.
I think that it's, you don't shy away from the context and the world.
Yeah.
And that's what Into the Spider-Verse does so well, is it builds the world of this
Right.
character.
Yeah.
Not like, it's not so generic that oh, everybody can just relate to this, but it's specific, like you said, to this character.
Yes.
But there's truths and principles and ideas and experiences and conundrums, like I said before, that we all either experience or we can relate to in some way or another, which I think is really important to highlight those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Because it just in a general cultural level, that reminds us of our unique differences and our unique truisms.
Yes.
That we experience, and that we do have different like life experiences, but we also have this like similar struggles and choices and feelings.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's what again, I think that's why I love the movie so much, and my brother loves it, is believe it or not, I did not grow up, neither did my brother, like Miles did. We grew up in the suburbs, in New Jersey. But we still relate to certain specific traits or things that Miles would do or whatever. And honestly, it really just wasn't his being black. It was just his personality. He was so quirky that my brother and I just related to that, especially my brother. We related to that. I think it is important to explore different cultures and things like that. My problem is just when you use that and it becomes more divisive instead of inclusive or just to represent something. So going back to Captain Marvel, it's disappointing as a woman to watch someone who's so arrogant, and the easiest way to decide whether she's really a well-written character, unfortunately or fortunately, is just switch the gender. Just switch it. Make her male. And now she's even more annoying and more arrogant and more just whatever. And you're just like,
men
switch her back. No.
Okay, fine. Make her a girl again. At least then she's pretty. Come on. Well, and I do think maybe I feel this because I do spend so much time, to bring it back to the thing I actually know about. I do spend so much time watching Christian movies, and to see like kind of such blatant propaganda and such blatant, kind of the opposite of what we talk about, where you have like unrelatable characters in like very common situations, where it doesn't take you on any kind of like new adventure, but yet you see people doing things that nobody would do, and movies like you mentioned, God's Not Dead, can be really divisive because there's no like open door to it. It otherizes people who don't believe or agree with the movie, and that can be so off-putting to people who you hope change. It kind of makes this announcement that I don't believe, I believe you're beyond redemption, that the people who we claim, the people who we were able to raise funds to make this movie, they probably used like, we're going to be able to reach all these people, and yet all the people that they claim they want to reach are being ostracized within the film. And I don't think that's a strictly Christian phenomenon.
No.
I think
It's
that
more
can
popular,
exist.
maybe, and like it's
Yeah,
more common.
right.
I mean, but no, I agree
Because
with you.
I don't think they made Into the Spider-Verse. I don't think they were raising funds for that to say, look, we're going to make a black
Right.
superhero,
Right.
because they weren't using that as some sort of
Right.
crutch or marketing
Yeah.
ploy.
Right.
I think and that's what I mean by confident. I think that
Yeah.
there's just a level of confidence where they just made a good movie
That's right.
about a character
Right.
that people like and a lot of
Yeah.
people relate to. And not that he just happens to be black.
Right.
He is black.
Right.
And that's the story that they told.
Right. I think that's how most stories really need to be told, is that you focus on the premise and the theme and everything like that. And then if you decide that your character is a person of color, female, whatever, something that is going to cause this huge hoopla or whatever, make sure that it's part of the world building and part of the character, but it's not overshadowing the story. That's the problem I have when people say we need representation. Yes, we do, but also that should not affect too much of the story at the end of the day. Even when you take a movie like Black Panther, which was very big on black people and culture and all of that, at the end of the day, it's still a Marvel film, and it's still about T'Challa realizing that the old ways were not the way that he wants to lead Wakanda, and he needs to change. But he also doesn't want to end up hateful and angry, oh my god, I forgot his name.
Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan's character. Thank you.
I don't remember the main
Killmonger.
character.
There it is. Okay.
There you
so,
go. Yeah.
Even movies like that, I say like that's still, if you want to go further into the character's culture and not just focus on the story, that's the way you balance the two. Because Wakanda was a lot of world building, which was great. Mm-hmm. It was its own world, basically. But there was still a story that had to be told. And, that's the kind of important part. It's kind of, not to bring it up too much, but it's kind of something that I've learned in working on the webcomic that I'm creating, in that, like, my main
No, bring it up. I think
Thank
it's
you.
good. That's smart.
But it's set in, like, the late 1800s during, like, the asylums, when they were still torturing mentally ill people and not understanding that that's not how you go about treating people with mental illness.
Yeah.
And
turns
out, who knew? So the main character is Chinese. Her name's Valerie. And I had to do a bit of research, and it's kind of unfortunate during the time of history in America that there was this law passed that Chinese people could no longer enter America for like a decade or two. And so I thought that would be an interesting reason as to why the parents didn't want to cause trouble. And when Valerie was rebellious as a teenager, they sent her away to the asylums, even though she probably technically wasn't insane. She was just being a teenager. Now, I'm not going to take that one bit of history and spend the whole story talking about injustice to Chinese people. That's not the story we're telling here. The story we're telling is a woman taking vengeance after being inhumanely tortured in an asylum, Things like that are in my story. There is racism, injustice, sexism, whatever, but that's not the story. The story is about vengeance. So that's what I mean by, like, I think there's a balance to have with culture, agenda, history, all that other stuff. Because at the end of the day, it's about the story. And stories impact people. Stories are powerful. So, like, you have to make sure that that's the main child that you're coddling or whatever. I don't know. That was a weird metaphor, but I'm going to go with it.
But that's true. I mean, when you're creating something, it is hard when somebody just their whole point in creating something is to get a message out.
Yeah.
That really can negatively affect the story. People don't go see movies or read comics or whatever to be propagandized to.
Yeah.
They do it to escape from our real world. And,
right.
And oftentimes that then gives you an insight on something that you may not otherwise know that does apply to the real world.
Right.
But I don't think that should be the intention. And I do think that some of these, I mentioned the Wrinkle in Time. I didn't see the movie, so I don't know. It may be the best movie ever
I didn't
made.
see it either. Some people I follow that review things, they were saying, it wasn't great.
But I did see Black Panther, and what's interesting about it is, I think it is important to make the distinction between the movie itself and the marketing campaign around the movie.
Right.
And I think it's too bad that Black Panther had such a divisive marketing campaign.
It did, yes.
Connected to it. And sometimes it was the people marketing it, and sometimes it was the people who were just very excited about the movie.
Right.
But just kind of, ideas like you shouldn't, people writing New York Times columns or whatever saying that white people shouldn't see this movie because they might be taking the seat of a black person who can see it. Well, that is divisive. Like, that's not a good thing to say.
Or
you shouldn't
white children should not dress up as Black Panther for Halloween because whatever. I don't know. I'm too tired to
I
come
dressed up
with
as
the
Superman
excuse.
as a kid.
Right.
And that's an important part of my childhood. I love Superman to this day.
Yeah.
Because I've always liked him. Liked Superman and the Ninja Turtles and that kind of thing. But I wasn't a turtle, turns out. but I do think that
you weren't from Krypton either, Kevin. So
no, I wasn't. He is an alien. That's right. But the fact that you have these kind of, I do think that there's a level to where a movie can be tainted by that sort of thing. Right. And I think two things. I think many things, but here's two. One, I think it's important to recognize that these companies are businesses,
right?
And none of them, whether it's PureFlix or it's
Universal,
Marvel,
right?
Whatever, like they're just trying to figure out. All right, we're not sure if we're gonna make what we thought we were gonna make off of this movie.
Yeah.
What can we tap into?
That's right.
To I mean. They do it in politics too, like Joe Biden talking about like South Carolina and just this blatant pandering and stuff,
right?
Or any of them,
right?
Any of the politicians. I didn't mean to call out Joe Biden, but
we're trying to stay away from politics on this show, Kevin.
Yeah. But I think that us as consumers and viewers,
yes,
whether it's Christian movies, there's this like. Oh, we got to go see it. God's Not Dead was probably one of the biggest offenders in this way. Like, text your friends and tell them. And people saying, if you don't go see this movie, you don't love Jesus and stuff
and
like
I did that,
and,
unfortunately. I was still brainwashed back then before.
You were still brave enough, you mean, to be open about it.
So brave.
But so I think that's important. The second thing, who knows? Who knows what the second thing was that I was thinking?
Oh, no.
I think it's just more in the post viewing where we walk out, the way people are like, oh, you got to go see this movie and this and that. And it's important. And, I think that there's things in God's Not Dead that are dangerous to implement in your real life, like challenging a professor and yelling at him in front of the class and that's
your comment on that to this day cracks me up. He's like, that's how you do it. You yell back at the professor. That's how you get your point across.
Okay, the truth is my mom died. Oh yeah, well, then I'll show you. Like, whoa, let's go. But in the same way, like I think it would be bad to implement like the we pick our king by beating each other up and whoever wins. That happened in Black Panther. Like, I don't think Wakanda has the best form of government.
No.
I don't think that's a good thing to implement in our society. And so
but some of it at least was questioned, which is nice. That I like. There's a lot of things I like about it. I did a video on female action and why Black Panther's one of the few that does female action good and diversifies even female characters. Unlike Captain Marvel, which I could go on and on about that movie, it's just really disappointing, that movie. It really is, because I thought they were really going to explore like the Kree and the Skrulls, and then they do this 360 thing with the scrolls, and Captain Marvel is just this perfect person, and this whole time she needed to learn that instead of self-control, she just needs to be a badass all the time.
That's all she needs.
What kind of lesson is that for girls? Like, even I as a woman agree that we, as just individuals, but as a woman, you need self-control in your life over your emotions, over your mental health, over whatever. You need self-control. You shouldn't be a wild person. Nobody wants that. That's not how you function in society or just as a person. You need self-control.
Right. And it's good even for yourself. Like, you know, you can spend all day kind of like blaming your circumstances and things that have happened to you, or your own mental issues.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, there's only one way to fix, or at least there is a way to make it better than it is. Not necessarily to fix it, but developing self-control. That's a good starting point.
And even if they didn't want to do,
and it may, like, self-improvement can really, you know, that's a great place to start. And then then you can more clearly see, well, yes, there are other factors in my life that are preventing me from being all that I can be. But you're the only one who's genuinely affected by the negative aspects of yourself. And I don't know. I've had to learn this in my own life. Just, you know, I've got ADD, and I've got all kinds of reasons I could make excuses for why I'm not where I want to be or who I want to be. Sometimes it's just luck, external factors. But still, like, if I was making excuses all day, then you know, I don't know. I've got all the I'm real privileged, so I can't think of anything bad about me. But
my problem is, like, they could, and I'll conclude on this because I could talk about this all day, but my conclusion is just the fact that as a writer, as a storyteller, because I'm just so amazing. No, I'm not. But as a storyteller, I think looking at Captain Marvel's character, the best thing you could have done is what they were hinting at in the trailer, which is that she was a rogue soldier. And basically what they kind of did with Captain America, where he goes from, like, pro-government to, like, think for yourself, and, like, government's not perfect and don't just blindly give your loyalty to that, whatever. Kind of have something of that resort of finding identity and finding your own morals, because at the moment she was working with the Kree to find out they're not who she thought she was. Now she has all this blood on her hands. Like, you can't just blaze through that. And then at the end, she's killing all these Kree as if, like, she hasn't known them, she hasn't fought with them, this isn't conflicting to her. She's just like, no, I'm just twirling around in space killing folks. And it's like, where that doesn't hurt. That's not difficult for you to say, oh, I gotta stop these people who are kind of like brothers and sisters to me. Like, basically, you had the chance to tell a story of a military woman who has to think for herself and not have such a collective mind, and realize, like, oh, it's not just about being Kree. It's about being a good person. It's about helping others that are on Earth, even if they're not Kree. You could have done so much with that. And what do? No, we're not going to do that. We're just going to destroy a lot of retcon of Marvel. And we're also just going to have a female character who can kick butt and isn't afraid of Thor's hammer. That's what we're going to do.
Do you think some of that comes from like because you have so many companies now just kind of playing to whatever the loudest people on Twitter or the loudest people who I don't know, what are people emailing? They're doing letter writing campaigns.
Just
I don't know how they're getting this pressure. But, like, you look at
Tumblr,
the latest Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker, and it is just, the whole movie is just a response to blogs. Like, okay, we're sorry for everything Rian Johnson did. We're sorry for any implication that we might have said that a female character isn't perfect. But yet they still didn't do it right, because they have Poe, is that his name? Who's the
I know who you're
who's all the
talking
main
about.
characters?
I can't.
Several characters who are barely in the movie,
Right.
that I think probably were in the movie more.
Mm-hmm.
And but anyway, my point of all that is,
Yes.
it's like we have to make the most bland characters and
Right.
make sure the people who are the loudest we're placating to them.
That's right.
And yet, so they never dive into anything. They never.
No.
I mean, the Christian movies deal with this all the time because they're
Yes. Yeah.
and you can very clearly explain it because they will get letters.
Right.
They will get people complaining because they have to make movies that pastors can play
Right.
on a Sunday night when they have a movie night, and they won't get the old ladies coming up and complaining that what if little Jimmy didn't understand. You know, I understand that by the end of the movie, the main character gets better. But if you have him like smoking and drinking at the beginning of the movie, little Jimmy might think that you're saying that's okay. So they don't do anything like that. And maybe, so it's easy to explain in a Christian movie exactly why none of their characters are interesting.
Right.
But I'm wondering if maybe that's what's happening with kind of, you know, these big tentpole movies. They're like, we've got to make everyone, like if everyone doesn't see this movie, we don't make any money because we spent so much.
Yes.
How can we make sure nobody's upset?
Yeah, I think that's definitely for sure with Star Wars. I have never seen such a I was saying this to myself last night. I talk to myself, so that's fun. But anyway, I was saying how I've never seen such a visceral, divisive movie, even if it was by accident, between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. I've never seen such outrage from fans since The Last Airbender adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yeah. I've never seen this much people just are disgusted and pissed, and it's all right, everybody, calm down. But I had nothing against Rey. I know a lot of people like to throw around the term Mary Sue, blah blah blah. I'm not here to say.
They would have never known of the term if it wasn't for that movie.
I don't know if I would say she's a Mary Sue necessarily, because you have Mary Sues of male characters. So I wouldn't say that. I would say just that she's not an interesting character because she doesn't really have drive or personality, but drive is really the part that drives me crazy, kind of. She's doing things because she has to do them or because that's the Jedi thing. But what do you want? You know, as Uncle Iroh says in Avatar to Zuko, but what do you want, Zuko? Not what your father wants you to do. What do you want? And that's what I ask to every female character I ever sit down to watch. What do you want? And only a few have really answered that question. Wonder Woman's one of them, where she wants to stop Ares because she wants innocent people from stopping to be killed. Now, obviously, that's not the full story, but she wants something, and she's going after it, even if it means she'll never come back to Themyscira. How many female characters have that much conviction in something that they have this conflict that I have to leave something I know behind to go after what I want? I don't know if there's... Well, yes. Mulan will always be up there. I mean, it's just...
But that's true. Mulan is a great example of a strong character arc, and that hero's journey and the fight for something that she truly believes in, even though all of culture is telling her she's wrong.
Right.
And I think maybe it's easy for us because we understand, our culture understands, we have a perspective on what the right thing is to do. But even then, she's going out and kind of, I mean, those are inspiring, interesting stories. And Wonder Woman is the same way. You know, her culture is saying this is what we do. We are separatists.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, but
there are other people out there who need our help.
Yeah.
So
and I think that Black Panther has that.
Yes,
that
it does.
Same
which is another. Yeah, which was a big thing that I loved about T'Challa. I really didn't care for Killmonger's character. I know this is going to be very triggering for people, but I honestly think he's one of the least best written Marvel villain characters. I said female. Sorry. And I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me for that.
That was a Freudian slip because you can play female with villains.
Right.
Wow.
No, you know what it is? Because I'm very pro female villains. That's what it is. I love seeing female villains. There's not enough of them that are good anyway. But anyway, I won't get into that. But the point is that when it came to Killmonger, I felt like he wasn't a compelling villain. I feel like the most compelling villain in Marvel will always be Loki to me, because he wanted his father's love more than anything. He wanted his dad's attention as much as he felt Thor was getting it, and he was the favorite child. And ever since then, that's dictated every choice he's made, basically.
Yeah.
And we kind of almost forgive him because we get it. Like, we get that he feels that pain. Killmonger is upset, understandably, because of racial history in America and all across the world to Black people. And I get that. However, how has that affected you specifically? Because technically, the thing that's affected you the most was actually your own people who killed your father, your uncle who killed your dad. That had nothing to do with white people. So I need to see you go through that, or a flashback. And I also need to see you as a human, because you're just angry all the time. You kill your girlfriend like a psychopath, like she was nothing in the beginning of the movie. I want you to walk up to a Black kid that's being bullied by white kids, or being bullied by someone, and stand up and then say, brothers gotta look out for brothers. Then you have my attention, because you're human. Who cares? Who has a heart? But if you're angry and you killed your girlfriend like it was nothing, and you're just so
then
blind.
You're just a psycho.
Right, you come off as a psychopath.
No, I love relatable bad guys. Yes. Because then now I have something to think about.
Not only that, but a lot of times it tells you, like, I could be like that. Like, I don't like when people say, like, people look at serial killers and they're just like, oh, this is disgusting. I'd never be like that. And I'm like, how do you know that, though? How do you really know, depending on how you grew up or whatever?
It's kind of like people looking at history and saying, I would be on the right side of history.
Right.
Oh, you would? You would? Wow. How convenient. It's amazing. Yeah. No, it's that I think is good storytelling. I think I talked a lot about that in my unplanned review, because
yes, you did.
And that's a very hard thing to explain to people, especially who don't agree with. They're like, well, how else would you make a movie about the most evil people in the world? Right. Well, I mean, as much as I like Tarantino films and stuff, I don't think there would be anything wrong. Well, nah, I'm not gonna say that out loud.
Too late. No, it's digital.
I was just gonna say that if in telling a story from Sound of Music, for example.
Okay.
You have what they were able to do in Sound of Music, because Sound of Music ends with the Nazis,
Right. And, which I didn't realize as a child. And then when I watched it more recently, a couple years ago, I was like, oh, this had Nazis in it. I was like,
yeah. Well, I didn't know. That's
click.
How I found out about that. I remember as a kid watching it, and then my parents explained to me who the Nazis were and that sort of thing.
Right.
So they created a character in that Fitz,
right?
Who you have the girl it loves, and then you see him later, and so that's how they were able to create not just here's evil Hitler and these bad people rising, but you had somebody who turned, and that's to me that always stuck with me as a kid, like that emotional tension of like, and he does the wrong thing, he like blows the whistle on them and stuff, and it's for such a silly movie, that's a really powerful moment, and it's not like, hopefully that movie doesn't get canceled or whatever. Like, oh wait, it's trying to get you to sympathize with some of the Nazis.
Right.
But a movie that can do that can show you like, here's this culture where this young man was pulled out of his life, and forced to, Civil War movies do that a lot too, where you said that during the Civil War it was brother against brother,
right?
And that sort of tension of understanding these like cultural pressures, and what we cheer for then is the people who stand up and say, yeah, but this is wrong, who can kind of get outside that. But a lot of people don't, and a lot of people just go with whatever culture is saying is the right and the wrong thing.
This is why I love anime, and I talk about it on this podcast, because once I got introduced to the world of anime, I got introduced to basically the best storytelling there ever was. I was supposed to make a video essay about it, but I never got around to it. Maybe in the future. But
You'll
anime,
do it. I believe in you.
Thank you. Anime is basically the best storytelling I've ever seen in my life as a writer, because on top of the world building, the premise, the main characters, all of this, their villains a lot of times are very empathetic and sympathetic to me personally, because you get how they got to where they were, because they show you that I started out like this, or I was really just trying to do this, but then I took a wrong turn, or my method was off, or I went too far extreme to the left instead of in the middle, and all of this stuff that most people, they're just like, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear that he was a human being. He's the bad guy. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Shush.
No, it's good to have a misguided bad guy.
Right.
You know, like they're motivated by good, but they're misguided in their tactics.
Even if they're not misguided, my favorite example that I'll probably talk about in another episode is the Joker movie. I know a lot of people are up in arms about it because of mental illness, or because people are saying that this justifies the Joker. I don't think it does any of that. It's a tragedy. It's showing you the downfall.
What if little Jimmy misunderstands?
What if little Jimmy puts on a clown mask and starts killing people?
I know. That's the problem, isn't it? It's people who are like, it's not like they don't get it. Most people are like, yeah, I get it, but what if there's an idiot out there?
Right.
Like, we can't live our lives based on what if there's an idiot out there.
Not only that,
there
but
is.
Like, not all
there's
stories,
an idiot out there.
Well, yeah, there is an idiot, but not all stories are happy endings. And that's because just like in happy endings, you learn that, like, for example, through Lord of the Rings, you learn even through dark times, there's hope as long as someone stands up for goodness, right? Okay. So the Joker is the exact opposite. When someone feels beaten down by society, nobody's ever been nice to him, he feels the only rational thing is to cause chaos, because he believes that all people are just inherently bad, because that's all he's experienced is bad people in his life. Now, nobody's saying he's right. We're just saying this is how he got to this conclusion.
That's his perspective.
That's his perspective,
because the movie even shows people being nice to him.
That's right.
And he chooses not to let that sink in. His perspective is that everyone's being mean to him.
That's right.
And so he's reacting to that. But in reality, there are people being mean to him, but there are people who are neutral, and there are people who are nicer than they should be to him.
Yeah, there are a few people that
even though
were here
some
and
of
there
the people,
nice to him.
Yeah, that he chose not to see that and just see the bad parts.
Yeah.
I was thinking about a little bit earlier, because you mentioned your webcomic, and it is a webcomic, right?
Yes.
I don't want to downgrade it.
No, it's a webcomic. It will be on Webtoons. Okay. I'm excited. Yeah.
Cool. The story of, I was just talking to myself the other day. No, I was talking to my wife, Carmen, the other day, and we were talking about the Count of Monte Cristo. And which reminds me of your story, because that's the story of a guy. He goes to jail, and then kind of he's seeking revenge.
That's right. Yeah.
Spoiler alert. When he gets out of jail, so for his mistreatment stuff, and he was wrongly jailed, but so the book and the movie, there's a lot of changes, because the movie is 2 hours or less, and the book is like 1,000 pages or something. But there's also, they changed the ending to be what I feel is a much more American ending, where he gets the girl in the end in the movie. But in the book, spoiler again, he doesn't.
Right.
And what he has to do, and the issue is more than just changing it from a tragedy to a happy ending, but they changed the whole meaning of why they even went through that. The idea isn't that you get everything you want in the end, or that revenge. You know, the same story as Batman in a lot of the Batman stories.
Right.
Revenge eats at you.
Yes.
Whenever you're trying to fix it all because, these people did this bad thing to me, and so I'm going to spend my life angry at them and chasing them down and hoping that the person who was mean to you will for some reason be nice to you now,
Right.
and then you'll be able to live your life, or you can kill that person.
Right.
In the book, it isn't until he realizes I lost that. He cuts his losses and walks away that he can actually have. So it is a tragedy, but it's
Right.
also not a tragedy
Right.
because he builds a different life.
Yeah.
He had this vision of this is what life was supposed to be for me. And most of the book, after he's out of jail,
Right.
and he's justified.
Yeah.
If we all would look at it and say, yeah, man, he was done wrong. He was jailed for years and years and years, and this guy treated him bad. He lost the woman that he loved, but he couldn't be happy until he said, yes, that stuff was wrong, but I can't tie myself to it. I have to move on.
Right.
And he doesn't get the girl in the end.
Right.
In metaphorically and literally.
Right.
And that's when that's supposed to be like a good thing. That's the lesson.
That's
that he was imprisoned for longer than his prison term because he imprisoned himself to the revenge aspect. And I think that's such a good lesson and a good story for all of us, because we all, whether it's like, man, I bought this car and this guy done me wrong, and I knew people growing up like that who would just, it would eat at them that they had got ripped off on something, and sometimes you just got to walk away and say, yeah, that was wrong of them. I guess I better not try to buy anything from them again. And yeah, no, it's an interesting lesson that I don't think is taught very often. And I think that kind of idea, that kind of the American aspect of storytelling is we have a happy ending. There's a lot of books that have turned into movies that turn it into this Cinderella happy ending story that unfortunately, I think then culturally we've lost some of the understanding of what it means to not, what it means to see a tragedy and enjoy the tragedy for the cautionary tale that it is.
Right. Speaking of, oh God, I had a good segue and then I forgot it. Speaking of tragedy, but not tragedy, I wanted to quickly talk about the Prince of Egypt, which I feel like is a masterpiece in many aspects, music, story, artwork, everything in between. But the thing that I find the most masterpiece, which I didn't fully appreciate as a kid that I appreciate now, is, like we said before, the way that they portray Ramesses in a compelling villain. And obviously, as they state at the beginning of the movie, they take creative liberties of the Bible, of Moses and Ramesses and all of that. But I think they were great creative liberties because it makes the story more interesting, more compelling.
It's better than the Bible.
I won't say that.
That's what you're saying?
I don't want to be hanged.
I thought you said you were a Christian. You in this one podcast, you've lost everyone.
I've basically lost everyone.
That's why you invited me on.
I've lost the pro-black. I've lost the feminists. I've lost the Christians. I've lost the atheists. I've lost everybody, and I wasn't even trying to. I'm just talking about stuff.
And the Nazis. You even lost them.
That's right.
You're like, the Sound of Music didn't represent us very well at all.
Oh my gosh.
All your Nazi fans.
Everybody's like, Liz and Kevin are going to hell for this. Be like,
or maybe we're
the
only ones who aren't.
But yeah, I just wanted your thoughts on that, because I have one other question, which is a quick question because I don't want to hold you all day, but your quick thoughts on the Prince of Egypt when it comes to like just the storytelling and like the creative liberties they took in the story, because the story is really about the brotherhood and the friendship between Moses and Ramesses, which I think was very powerful. And even at the end, Moses doesn't feel like he fully won because he lost his brother that he felt so close to. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I often say, I've talked about The Chosen, which is a series on VidAngel, I think, but it's also, they have their own app. and it's about the disciples, and that takes a lot of creative liberties, but also it's made by Christians who kind of, when it is biblical stuff, they try to keep it accurate to the Bible. But the fact is that the Bible isn't a storybook. It is it's written as a documentation. And so if you're going to make a story out of a lot of the parts of the Bible, you have to take some liberties, or else it's going to be boring.
Right.
And I think it's understood, especially with Prince of Egypt, because they're singing and it's a cartoon,
right,
and stuff, that it's not the actual story. This is a retelling of a true story with a lot of creative liberties taken. I think that important stuff is there. You know, they include enough. I mean, it's more than 70%, because it's an Old Testament story. So Jews and Gentiles will enjoy that story. So I think it was important to just culturally to do that story well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting, that is what the story is about, this conflict between, Moses is caught between two worlds, and the representation of his royal world is Ramses, and Ramses is caught between two worlds as well, of the pressure to be the pharaoh, and a good one,
right, versus
his familial, sorry, I dropped a thing.
It's okay.
His familial connection and and friendship. What's interesting is, in the Bible, it kind of is similar to David and Jonathan's friendship. In I don't know where, Judges, Kings, somewhere in there. King David, before he was king, was on the run from Saul, and Saul had a son named Jonathan who David was friends with,
right? And
there's tension there, and so it's interesting that story is actually there in the Bible, even though Jonathan, that's his name, right? Yeah, it's got to be. I'm forgetting my Sunday school stories. Jonathan does stand up for David and stuff, and doesn't turn evil. It's interesting that story's there, but I think the story of Moses is more popular.
Right.
So going back to it, why not? There's a million different stories in the Bible, but they always keep telling.
They always keep doing the most popular ones
in the gospel.
Which I don't know who decided which ones were popular. The lady who,
the one with the lady who drove a tent stake through a guy's head. They don't do that movie. Or the guy who got stabbed and he was so fat that the fat closed in around the knife and couldn't pull it out.
The Christian movies are just now getting used to having rated R films, so it'll be a while before we get some actual violence. And
I want to see like like there was that movie 40 or something where it was just a bunch of dirty sketches. I didn't watch it, of course, because I'm a Christian, but they should do like a they get a bunch of different directors and just do like Christian R rating.
Right.
And that could be the name of the movie. And they just do a bunch of like short films, like
separate, like a Christian version of like Deadpool and Logan's, where it's just like rated R after rated R after rated R, because obviously that means it's good.
This would be, I think there was a movie called The ABCs of Death, and it was a horror movie, and they got a bunch of directors to make, they're like 5 to 10 minute. Basically, they had rules, like you have to include like these things,
right? And
a bunch of different directors. Some of them are like foreign directors, and some American, and it gets real weird. I don't necessarily recommend it from a, but it's interesting. Like I found it really interesting. They should do that, but get all these directors to do the most violent moments in the Bible. Yeah, like little vignettes. I'd watch that.
Yeah, I'd probably watch it too, because I do like violence. as I've said before on this channel. I'm a big violent person.
Yeah.
My dad's concerned how violent
Sure.
his daughter is,
Yeah.
but it's fine. I'm not in
You should
jail,
be.
so that's all that matters.
That's all you can do. Not be
So
in jail.
the last thing I wanted to ask real quick, I usually try to do something hipster. So a lot of hipster people are loving things nowadays that are old, that now are totally hipster and cool now or whatever. One of those things is Monty Python and the Holy
Oh
Grail.
yeah.
And that's,
Look.
cool. I just recently watched it for the first time last year or
Yeah.
something like that. It's the funniest comedy I've ever watched in my life. And I never thought that
It's
that would
great.
happen. I love it so much. I think it's probably like the framework for any comedy. The fact that the way they start the movie with the credits being like gibberish and they keep saying that like someone got a hold of like the credits and they had to kill him and all this stuff, and then it ends with them just getting arrested by cops, and it's supposed to be like in the like during Arthur's realm, so like
They are
you're seeing
right.
castles and guys pretending to ride horses with the guy clacketing behind him, and then at the end there's cop cars and people getting arrested, and you're like, I'm sorry, what is going on?
It is funny how much it's just so like that. Clearly, they put a lot of work into this,
They
and
did,
yet they
yeah.
end it by just. I mean, it's kind of like the History of the World by Mel Brooks, who ends it where they crash through onto the set of a different movie,
Okay.
and then a fight just breaks out. It's very similar to that. Well, so what was the question?
My question
Do I
is,
like that
do you
movie?
think that, what was the question? Oh, do you think it is underrated or overrated, and why? Because it seems just like kind of how like I'll probably be talking next week with my other guest about Bob Ross and how he's made a comeback. Do you feel that these old movies, especially specifically Monty Python and the Holy Grail, that it has become overrated, or do you think it's still, even with this rise in popularity, it's still underrated? More people still should see it, because I just saw it like last year. I didn't know anything
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's perfectly rated.
Okay. Way to dodge the question.
I think every generation discovers that movie, to be honest with you, because
Right.
I remember I was probably 15 when a bunch of my friends were like, this movie is so funny.
Right.
And I'm like, what movie? And they were quoting it and stuff. And I told
Yeah.
my parents about it, and they started laughing, and they're like, all the guys in high school were quoting that movie when we
Right.
were kids, which is
Yeah.
when it came out.
Right.
And so we watched it, and it was hilarious. And I've made several references in my videos to that
Right.
movie. And I think what's nice about it is most of it, except for the castle scene, is safe to watch with everybody.
Right.
There's some references or whatever, where the other Monty Python movies like Life of Brian, or there's a something about the world. Anyway, I can't remember what it's called, or Flying Circus. There's a lot of stuff that you wouldn't want to watch with your parents, I would
Right.
say, or your kids, not your kids specifically, in general, people. And no, I think it's great. It's such a great movie, and so much is influenced. Like, you watch that and you're like, oh, that's where VeggieTales got most of its jokes from.
Right. Right.
So much of VeggieTales like stems from that type of humor, and obviously the mixed with the Muppets, VeggieTales
Right.
is very influenced by those two things. And yeah, I think it's great. I didn't realize that it was having a resurgence, but I think that movie is the perfect example of like this universal type of humor.
Right.
Family Guy wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that. I'm not saying Family Guy is good. It kind of sucks most of the time, because you can figure out South Park did such a great job at summing up what Family Guy is, and after that, everybody's like, "Oh, right, they just do the same thing over and over again." But like, I definitely think that Holy Grail is kind of the gold standard.
Yeah.
The Grail. Life of Brian's great. I think I like that movie because it's a Christian movie. Like, it's a parody. It's the
I still have
story
to
of a
watch
guy
it, but I
who,
know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
he was born in a stable, like right near Jesus,
Right near Jesus,
a different
yeah.
stable, and he grows up and people think he's the Messiah,
Right.
and they're chasing him down, and there's so many great lines. There's this part where I think I've played this clip, but there's this part where like they're arguing over whether or not they should, like, they're these anarchists, and they're arguing whether they should fight for the right for men to have babies, and they're like, but men can have babies. And he's like, but that's not the point. The point is they should have the right to do it. And it's very interesting how that parody has become a reality now.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's also a part where like people are like running after this Brian, who they think is the Messiah,
right?
And he's like, no, you've got to think for yourself. And they're like, we have to think for ourselves. Like,
right.
They're all saying it at the same time.
I remember that one you used. I cracked up laughing because it's the irony
it's
of
true.
collectivism.
Like,
you know,
he gives this great speech about how important being an individual is.
That's
right.
And
I'm like, wow, this is so true.
Right.
And so good.
Yeah.
So I like that movie, but it is much more sacrilegious, and where they're, yeah. Anyway, I hope that answers the question.
It does.
I think they're very funny. There's some, like, Flying Circus, the TV show, has some good sketches and some bad, like, boring, not so funny sketches.
Right.
But they definitely in their movies influenced a lot of comedy today. I think that and Mel Brooks and the Zucker brothers are like the three biggest like influences on comedy today. Just kind of the idea of doing non sequitur humor where it's like, we're doing this thing, but now
we're doing this.
It's something completely different.
Right.
Just,
right.
Flying Circus reference as well.
Oh my gosh. Kevin, thank you so much for being
it was
on
nothing.
Here.
I was just sitting here anyway. Like, I was sitting here talking anyway.
You weren't even doing anything. I just called you up randomly. We didn't even plan this. It was just
I
like,
thought,
hey.
I didn't know this was a being recorded. Oh, great. There's a lot I need you to edit out. I'm kidding. Thank you for having me on. I really,
of course,
this is fun. Anytime.
Who would say no to say goodnight, Kevin? I don't even understand that, to be honest with you.
I don't know.
I know
right
it's probably just my rose-tinted eyes or something, but honestly, I don't know who would say no to say goodnight, Kevin, but that's just me.
I know.
And I feel horrible that I keep calling you by your YouTube name and not just saying Kevin. I have to.
It's good. It's you're getting the word out there. To all the people who stopped watching you by now.
Right, exactly.
Well, I'm working on a review right now of the Arthur movie. I don't know if you know about this. There's a movie, a 3D computer animated movie with Arthur that I'm working on right now called Arthur's Missing Pal.
Fun.
Which is Pal, of course. You watch Arthur as a kid?
I would watch it here and there, but I think it was more of Jordan and Josh from Blimey Cow. I think it was more their generation. My generation is a little bit younger than theirs, so by then...
You guys watch Caillou?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And my mom was not a fan, nor were her friends of, my childhood mom's friends and stuff.
No adult likes Caillou because he's a brat.
He's a brat, yeah.
Yeah. And what? Just a little bald kid being whiny all the time? That's the show? You want to talk about bad storytelling, Caillou.
Yeah. I grew
He's
up
up
more on
too.
like Franklin the Turtle or like my brother grew up on like the Backyardigans. You know what I grew up on, and I can still sing the song, Wonder Pets. And I still know the theme song. I started singing it randomly once to my friends Matt and Ashley when we used to have the Three Vibes podcast, and they were cracking up. I don't know where it came from. I really didn't.
What channel was that on?
I think it was known back then as Noggin, which is now Nick Jr., I believe. Bring Noggin back, please.
Interesting, because Nick Jr. was around when I was a kid. So maybe there was a point where they got rid of it and brought it back.
Yeah, because it
Jr.
was called Noggin for a
kid,
while. It was weird. I don't know.
When I was a kid, Nick Jr. was on during the day. So if you were ever at home sick from school,
right,
Nick Jr. was on. So there was nothing. Now we only had Nick Jr. for a year. So I don't know what happened. Like we only had Nickelodeon cable for a year.
Right.
1 year. My parents had a credit card and then that expired. And so we went back to just PBS. But there was a show on on Nick Jr. I know you want to get going, but I'm going to make you stay even longer.
No. I'm in no rush.
His name was Face. And it was just the screen was color and it had a face. And he's like, "Hi, I'm Face." I wonder if that guy's still around. Look it up.
Maybe he's voice acting. You know what he's doing? He's doing English voice acting for anime. That's what it is. Because voice acting is becoming a serious career. Which, by the way, if anybody wants to do voice acting, you should. It's becoming a really big thing. They need more anime dubs, English, and so on. So, but yeah, that's interesting. That's wild.
Weird world.
Well, Kevin, is there a place where people can find you besides your channel, which I will have in the description? Is there anywhere else?
That's probably it. I have a podcast.
Yes, you do.
I have a website, so saygoodnightkevin.com, and probably everything that I do now is up there. It's a great looking website. It's a fabulous website.
I looked at it on my phone. It's beautiful.
Huge website. It's the best website you'd ever imagine. It's and so anything I do is there. My YouTube channel and my podcast, and that's it. That's all I do.
Is there anything else you would like to add, say, regret saying?
Yeah, I'm sorry for everything I've said. I probably said it all wrong. See, this is why I have a hard time with like just normal religion. I can't follow all these rules. I'm not good at this. It's the only reason that I can do the Christian thing because of grace. So when there's other stuff where it's like, hey, I'm gonna mess it up. I'm sorry.
Well, now you're just preaching, Kevin, and unfortunately, we can't do much preaching.
Let me tell you about grace. We've all sinned, okay? Even if you think you haven't. I'm gonna go through the John Calvin's tulip with everyone. Total depravity.
Well, I just want to thank you again for being on here and giving
You're welcome.
So many laughs, much needed, because my weekend was horrible. So I might talk about that in another episode. Yes, but I had to talk to some people I didn't want to talk to, and they ruined my day, because that's what people do for introverts. So that's fun. But thank you guys so much for watching. And if you're still watching at this point, which I know most of you probably aren't, it's fine. I get it.
They're the great ones.
Right. Don't forget to subscribe and like and comment and everything in between. And until next time, bye.